Let's move on now to topic number 3. And the third emailed in topic today comes to us from Jesse Heymann, who writes, the Captain Marvel details in the Entertainment Weekly magazine feature said that they are skipping the origin story. I think for a character general audiences know almost nothing about, it's unnecessary. And origin stories lay solid foundations to bounce off on. Though repetitive sometimes, what do you think? All right, so what he's referring to is this EW article that came out that said, the Captain Marvel origin, that's not what this movie's going to be. It's not going to be an origin story. We've seen origin stories over and over and over again. Now, the point that they're bringing up here is that, well, wouldn't this be a good time to use an origin story? I mean, it lays the foundation for the character, and a lot of people really don't know anything about Captain Marvel. Here's the thing. A skilled filmmaker can let you get to know who a character is and what they're all about without necessarily doing an origin story. Let's take one of the few TV shows I watch. I watch Chicago PD. All right, this is a show I watch. And the lead character is this gruff detective, Hank Voight. I know nothing about this Hank Voight character. I know nothing about him before I watch the show for the first time. First episode, was it an origin story of Hank Voight? Going back to when he was a kid deciding he wanted to be a police officer and then his days in the academy and then the day he graduates to be a cop. Did I get an origin story? No. They just start that show, episode 1, with him. He's already a gritty cop in the city of Chicago doing his thing. And guess what? Through the story, I got to know who he is. And you can do the same. Now, you're right. Origin stories can be very beneficial. You can lay that foundation, but it's only one way to do it. It's not the only way to do it, right? It's certainly an effective way to do it, but also certainly not the only way to do it. We can get to know the character, become familiar with them, understand the story, get a grounding in who they are without necessarily having to use an origin story to do it. We didn't get an origin story for this Spider-Man. Now, you can make the argument that, well, that's because in the last number of years, we've already had 2 other versions of Spider-Man origins being told. Legitimate argument. But I still think that this Spider-Man stands on its own. And I think you can do it. Now, but here's the other interesting thing. They say they're not doing an origin story, right? They're saying they're just starting it off where she's already part of the Kree Force and all that kind of stuff. That's great. But this is one of the pictures that's been coming out. Her days on Earth as an Air Force pilot. So I have a feeling that we are clearly going to get some groundwork of the origin story of Captain Marvel in this movie. Maybe this movie doesn't start with the origin story. Maybe the origin story is told in flashbacks or whatever as the movie progresses. Maybe it's just being done a different way and using a different, not having to go back to that same origin story formula that a lot of other films have used, and maybe they're just doing it that way. Bottom line is this. I think there are definitely going to be origin story elements in this movie. This picture is just kind of proof of that. But beyond that, even if they don't, it's not really necessary. Can it be beneficial? Yeah. But is it necessary? Not necessarily. Not if you do it right. So I'm okay with it. I think you should be okay with it. Fact of the matter is, we're all just interpreting a lot of stuff. Let's wait and see what happens when the movie actually comes out. All right, let's move on now to the 4th email.